you know, for the next couple hours, I might not be able to remember the number for 911. When you buy any rough car, which I tend to do often, and you kind of embark on its path to rehabilitation, everything obviously takes a lot longer than you think it will. It's kind of like any new relationship. You go into it with all the optimism in the world, assuming that all these little changes and ideas and plans that you have are just going to go swimmingly, smoothly, and that there won't be any drama at all. And clearly that never happens with a car. Anything that seems like it'll take 6 weeks ends up taking 6 months, and you hit all these bumps in the road and obstacles and parts you can't find and things you can't fix, and it just drags on and on. And at the moment, I'm kind of nearing that light at the end of the tunnel with my latest LP640 and its color change. Hopefully, in the next few weeks, it will be Verde Draco and back here in Atlanta from Arizona. But it has been a long road, and I've obviously had it, I think, for about 6 months now. But about 2 years ago, I was in exactly the same place with my last LP640, the Grigio Telesto, previously fraudulently reported stolen manual LP640 that I had kind of gotten for free by flipping through the green car. And I had brought it back, drove it in here from Las Vegas and taken it to a body shop locally, and they'd kind of gone through it, done a lot of paint work, replaced a lot of parts, refixed some previous repairs, and just gone through the car. And after about 6 or 7 months, finally it was really ready to go. Now, it was far from perfect, because that's not the way I'm ever looking for a car to be. I want something that I can just drive guiltlessly, comfortably, and just take out into the world without having to worry too much. And so that December I had the car, I was driving it all the time. And obviously here in Georgia the weather doesn't get too miserable, so you can drive it all year long. I go to car shows and on little drives and things like that, and just daily drive the car, you know, as much as I could, because I was so excited to finally just have one with no big loan attached to it that I could just take wherever I wanted to. It was perfect. So that Christmas I was driving it, and New Year's and into January, it was all wonderful. But in the middle of January 2017, I had a family member that was seriously injured and hospitalized. And obviously the whole family rushed to the hospital, and we were all there during his first surgery, which was fairly immediate and much needed, with a lot of different injuries that were being addressed. And it was very touch and go. His condition was extremely critical. We were all very, very concerned. So we all stayed through that first night, and fortunately he made it through that first surgery. So we were all kind of there keeping an eye on him. But the next morning kind of rolls around, and people start needing to go to work. If they weren't entrepreneurs with the ability to kind of shift their schedule around, that was something that I could do. So I was quick to volunteer and say, look, I'll take the first day and kind of go through the first night here. I'll keep an eye on him, watch all the monitors, and report back every time we hear from the doctors. I said, let me go home, take a shower, and I'll bring my car back. So I did that, but the only car that I had at home was the LP640. I said, well, it's a surface lot. There's a lot of traffic through it. No big deal. I mean, I park it outside all the time. That's no big deal. So I bring the car back and just park it in the hospital parking lot right near the entrance where a lot of people will go by. Shouldn't be that big of a deal. Didn't park it across 3 spaces like some jerk. And I just go inside. And, you know, I'm getting all the updates from the doctors who all come in and ask me if I'm a doctor. And I said, well, I wish you were enough of a doctor not to ask me things like that. But no, but I appreciate the updates, and I would pass everything along to the family in a big group text. And I probably got an hour of sleep that night in 3-minute intervals between alarms going off and just watching him struggle. And it was a really, really tough time. But the next morning I go out for a walk to get something in the cafeteria, and I go out and I say, I'll just take a look at the car. And in the night, some pathetic excuse for a human being had taken it upon himself to walk or stomp all over the front of my car with some big muddy boots, all over the hood and the bumper and the fenders, and scratched it very deeply all over. And I was like, who on earth would do this? So I start looking around at cameras and things like that, trying to figure out, like, am I going to be able to catch this guy? What's going on? But obviously, even though this person has decided to add insult to the injury that we're having to deal with inside, I can't really attend to that much. I have to get back inside and report back to everybody and keep an eye on him just to make sure that everything's okay in ICU. So on my way back in, I talk to the valets. I say, hey, somebody just stomped all over my car. Like, if you can look at any security footage or anything. They're like, yeah, we don't think we have anything. All right, well, I'll just deal with it later. So I go in, I spend more time, just make sure everything's under control. And he wasn't getting worse at the time, fortunately, but he was far from, any chance of, getting off of all the life support systems and things that were in place. And so I didn't have much time to be distraught or upset or anything, or even really deal with it. But later that day, when there was kind of a hole, I went down and I met with one of the security guys, and I told him what had happened and said, here's where the car's parked. still there. You can go out, look, and see what happened. Like, is there any way you can figure out who this was? And they're like, we'll try, but I mean, obviously they didn't care. They were just like, why would you drive a Lamborghini to the hospital? I said, okay, well, all right. Well, so I go back in and spend the rest of the day, and I mean, at the end of the day, there's just nothing. They can't find anything. There's nothing I can do. So I decide, all right, let's just see if the world of social media can find something, because certainly with all the filth I have to sift through every day and all these feeds, someone who decides that they're going to do this isn't going to do so without documenting it for everyone to see on social media. And so I put it out on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and VINwiki, and I say, hey, if anybody finds a picture of some guy standing on top of a gray Lamborghini, not only will I send you a bunch of Lamborghini and VINwiki swag, but I will we'll find some way to offer some social justice to this fine human being. And so they all get excited. They all go out and try to look and scouring hashtags and locations, anything near the hospital, and they're just coming up blank. Nobody's finding anything, which just blows my mind that for something like this to happen, nobody decides to take a selfie during it. But a few days go by and nothing really turns up. But fortunately, my family member, even though he went through another 4 surgeries and about 3 weeks in ICU and almost 2 months in the hospital, he ended up making a full recovery. But the car obviously required a little bit more help. And so I drove it like that for a couple of weeks. Just, you can't worry about stuff that closely. But I got it back to the body shop, had it repainted, and, got it back out a couple of weeks later. And it's kind of like when you take these cars out into the real world, stuff happens. Yesterday, I had Matt Mormon here from Obsessed Garage, and he and I are kind of the bookends of how one might drive an interesting car. Obviously, he obsessively and constantly achieves perfection in the way his cars look. I'm kind of on the other end. I constantly achieve the bare minimum of functionality and cosmetic condition that anyone would ever consider acceptable with one of these cars. And I think neither of us are exactly right. Somewhere in the middle probably makes sense. You need to take a little better care of your stuff than I do, and you need to be a little bit more willing to branch out and enjoy things. And he'll share some stories over the next few weeks of kind of his experiences and, learning process of how to kind of take a breath and relax. But people ask me a lot, like, how do you feel just driving these things in normal everyday circumstances? What's going to happen if somebody hits it or somebody damages it? I'm like, look, I've got insurance. Everything can be fixed. At the end of the day, while it's an awesome car, it really is just a car. And they'll say, like, well, what if you get carjacked in it or something like that? I said, whoa, that'd be fantastic. If somebody comes up with a gun or something, I'm going to make sure they're comfortable, show them how to adjust the seat, make sure the mirrors are where they like it, explain how everything works. Everything's simple, but here's the buttons and things like that, and probably let them know something like, for the next couple hours, I might not be able to remember the number for 911. So why don't you just get out of here, don't get caught, and me and my insurance will deal with this in a few days, because there's nobody I'd rather sell a car to than an insurance company. But, obviously I hope none of that ever happens, and that's very much in jest, but you have to kind of have this attitude as you drive a car on a real road with dump trucks and bad drivers and texting and everything else. Like, bad things can happen to you and your car, and you have to kind of treat it that way, like it'll be all right. And the goal at the end of the day to me always has to be getting the car in the condition you're comfortable with as soon as possible, and just getting it out on the road and enjoying as many miles as you can. Because as you eliminate the obstacles to that kind of progress, that kind of lifestyle, that kind of goal set, that's when you really start to really enjoy the cars that you have. And that's really what it's all about. And of course, I hope that when my latest one gets back soon, that it gets to operate a little bit longer on the roads before someone decides to do something like this to it.